This is Adam Gierasch, director of Autopsy, and you're listening to the Graveyard Show podcast.
Welcome to the Graveyard.
And welcome to another edition of the Graveyard Show podcast, the Tombstone Edition. I am your caretaker, and the graveyard is open. Thank you for joining me here for this third tombstone that I am placing inside my newly renovated graveyard. Glad you could be here. And as you heard at the top of the show, I will be revisiting my interview with director Adam Gierasch. And I thought, since Tombstone number 2 had actor Hal Havens on the program, and he played Stooge in the original Night of the Demons, which is what was discussed in that interview, I thought, well, why not take a logical jump and go from someone who was in the original Night of the Demons to someone who would go on to eventually direct the remake of Night of the Demons, and that would be, of course, Adam Gierasch. Now, when Adam joined me back in 2009, it was not to discuss Night of the Demons. It was to promote his new film at the time, Autopsy, which was one of the 8 films to die for in the After Dark Horrorfest that year. And at that time, when I was doing my podcast, the 8 films to die for were coming out. And for my second podcast that I did, I had director Stuart Hopewell on, who directed the film Slaughter. And I was trying to get many of the directors as I could who had their films in the 8 films to die for, and I was only able to get a few of them on the program, Adam being one of them. When my podcast was originally streaming, it was every week, but for the 8 films to die for, I decided, because they were out and I wanted to be timely, I released one podcast on a Thursday, and then I released, actually this one I believe was on a Saturday, just to try to get promotion out there for these filmmakers while the After Dark Horrorfest was happening. So I tried to get as many of the directors from the 8 films to die for on the show as possible. I wasn't successful. I got some directors on. It wouldn't be until the following year where I got everybody to come on the show. But that was what I was trying to accomplish at this point so early on in the Graveyard Show podcast history. When I was revisiting this interview, putting it together for this Tombstone edition, I've forgotten how much I really enjoyed this interview with Adam. Adam was refreshingly honest about what it was like being a first-time director. Now, leading into Autopsy, he was a writer, actor, still is. But Autopsy was that first film that he was going to direct, and he really does not shy away from discussing what it is to be a first-time director. And I think for those of you out there that may be interested in getting involved in the entertainment business in whatever genre you're looking in getting into, or whatever portion of it, whether it's TV, streaming, movies, theater, I think this is an important interview for you to hear. Because, as I said, Adam was refreshingly honest, and he really gets into the idea of what it was like as a writer, becoming a director, and he co-wrote the script as well, but going through the casting process, going through the filming process, what his fears were, and also getting the crew that he could surround himself with that could help make him be a successful first-time director. I think that's one of those things that just gets forgotten about. I think in people's minds, you have a director that is the boss, and everybody else just kind of follows them and forgets that you have crew members that are well polished in their craft as well. And when you get that and you surround yourself with that, that is a huge difference. Having experienced professionals to surround you as a first-time director makes all the difference between success and failure. Because whereas a first-time director, you're going to make mistakes, you're going to have crew that's around you that can help prevent you from falling off that ledge by giving you options to do things differently and bring that experience that they have from their careers to help aid you in becoming successful and making the film work. So I hope you guys really enjoy this interview with Adam. Like I said, I had a great time doing it. I had a great time revisiting it. And as if on cue, right over there is my trusty werewolf. And of course, he will take you deep into the archives of the Graveyard Show podcast, where we will revisit my interview with director Adam Gierasch as we discuss his film, Autopsy. The time, January 10th, 2009. The place, Graveyard Show podcast number 3. Number 3? Wow, back in the day. All right. I will see you right here when you return. Enjoy this interview and safe travels. And as you can hear in the background, we are wasting no time because this grave is for my next guest.
Autopsy is one of the 8 films to die for in this year's After Dark Horrorfest. And joining me right now in the graveyard is the director and co-writer, Adam Gierasch. Adam, thank you for joining me.
You're welcome.
So why don't we just get to it? What is Autopsy about?
It's about a hospital, some kids, and a very long night.
Okay.
There's kids that are in a hospital and there's bad things that are happening. I don't want to give away too much because it's relatively simple.
I spoke with Stuart Hopewell, who directed the movie Slaughter.
Yep.
And that was one of the 2 movies that the After Dark Productions did as well. Not only are distributing, but they produced it as well. In your case, how did you get your film Autopsy in the film festival?
Oh, we showed it to them.
Okay.
And they said, oh, this is groovy. I have a suspicion that it's probably the most sort of horror of the bunch. I mean, Autopsy is very straightforward, good old-fashioned, all-American, just balls-to-the-wall horror.
Okay.
Nice and bloody.
Uh-huh.
Nice and bloody, mean-spirited, fun.
Now, without getting into it, how did you come up with the story for Autopsy?
Me and the co-writer Evan Katz. Evan had just moved to town, and he wanted to get his screenwriting career going, and he was going, well, Adam, maybe if we all wrote a script together, me, you, and Jace, who's my writing partner, maybe if we all wrote a script together, it would, I could get started. And I'm like, sure, no, that sounds like a good idea. And Evan's like, I've got this great idea. What if we have a bunch of punk rockers getting murdered in a squat? And I'm like, being a old-time punk rock dude myself, I was sort of warm to the idea, but then I said I have no idea how to make that into a movie. But I had always thought hospitals were creepy, so I came back and countered that maybe we should write a hospital horror film. I hadn't seen one in a while, and do something more in the lines of a Dr. Butcher, MD, but not sophisticated, just something really just nasty and like 80s and Italian theming.
Now, where did you go to get the film financed after the script was completed?
Well, that was actually quite a long process. What happened was we finished writing it, and immediately this one company optioned it. They will go nameless. And for a year, they kept calling us saying, we're going to make it. We're going to make it. And I was just sort of like, okay, good, go ahead. When you get the money to make the movie, let me know. And a year went by, and the option expired, and we got our script back. And so I'm like, okay, that's cool. Now me and Evan started talking, and I'm like, look, I think we need to make some changes to the script. So we radically altered the screenplay at that point, and I sent it to my agent, and I said, I think this would be a great one for me to direct. And I was talking to my friend, producer, Jessica Horowitz, and she's like, I'd love to come on and produce it. And we sent it out, and we got 2 offers. And, my agent did, And voila, we chose Warren Zide, the producer of Final Destination.
Okay.
And the rest is history.
I spoke with Jack Messett a few weeks ago regarding his movie, Midnight Movie, which is an independent film like yours, and we spoke about doing the negative pickup and getting distribution. How was it for you in terms of getting the exposure for your movie, even into the Horror Fest? What path was it like for you? Okay, the movie's done, it's cut, it's ready to go.
It was very straightforward, to be honest.
Uh-huh.
I mean, I feel a little spoiled telling you this, but from before we even started shooting, I thought AFilms.4 would be a very happy home for it.
Sure.
And, I just know that in the modern climate with distribution and stuff, it's very hard to get your movie into theaters at all. And I had really liked what they had done for a friend of mine's movie, Grave Dancers, by Mike Mendez.
Sure.
And so I was like, they kicked ass for Mike, and so I was like, if they kicked ass for Mike, they can kick ass for me. And so the first place we showed it to was After Dark, and we got distribution.
Wow.
So, I mean, the process was not long.
Okay, well, that's good. It's nice to hear kind of both sides of it, because I know for some people it is a long and involved process, and other people, sometimes it's right there. It kind of drops right on their lap, and off they go.
Well, the thing is, Autopsy is an independent film, meaning that it didn't, there was no major studio financing involved. But the people that financed Autopsy are they're a sales company and they do a lot of foreign sales. That would be Seven Arts. Okay. And they do a lot of foreign sales, and so we knew that going into it, we knew that there would be options. Okay. And we cast it accordingly.
This was the first movie that you directed.
Absolutely.
So, what was that like going into it as a first-time director, having to do casting sessions and pre-production?
Well, since I had been an actor for a long time, and then obviously a writer, but the casting was like a dream come true doing that. That was very fun, because I loved the idea of sitting on the other side of the desk. Yep. And watching people and like giving notes and being that guy that I wished I had auditioned for.
Sure.
So, I mean, that was good. Now, how was directing as a first-timer? It scared the shit out of me. Yeah. It's intimidating. I didn't fully know what I was doing, but that can be for the best, too. Like, I definitely, as a first-time director, you learn as you go. And I wish I could say I had all the answers before we started, but I didn't. And I had most of them when we finished. And certainly on the next movie, I was much more of director man. Yeah. But you know what? I don't think anybody is prepared for how sort of all-encompassing the directorial job is. Sure. Because it's a mixture of the creative with the managerial. Most people don't realize that. They think that being a director is just being an auteur and placing your vision on celluloid. It's not. It's, there's many different creative parts of the movie process. The first and foremost important one, I must add, is writing. It's very hard to make a good movie out of a bad screenplay. But, so there's writing and, and giving notes to the actors and talking to the cinematographer and coming up with the shots and the look of the film and the production designer, and all that stuff is great. And putting all that stuff together was like, I felt like I was finally home. Okay. It was like, I'd been wanting to do it for so long that I was like, yes, of course, we're going to look like this and this and this. And I was what I wasn't prepared for is the managerial side of it. No, which is, you were basically a ship's captain. There was rough seas ahead because you were making a low-budget film. And you have to pilot this sort of giant, clunky machine, through the rough waters and all the drama that comes along with that. Yep. Every person that has any kind of problem, you feel it on your shoulders. You feel like you're really just carrying, at least I felt like I was just carrying the weight of the world on me. And, and it got a little intense. I'm a pretty laid-back kind of guy. and just a huge horror fan, etc. I expected all that to translate more smoothly than it did, but no, there's a real skill and a real attitude, that's helpful to have.
And what kind of attitude was that kept you sane during this process?
Well, different attitudes for different parts of the process. The hardest part was definitely the script development. Oh my God, that went on for a long time.
Okay.
And when we're actually shooting, I was surrounded by really good people. I was not about at that point in time after I had finished developing the script and everything. I was not about to sort of hire my buddies and say, let's all go make a film.
Yeah.
I was like, no, I'm going to pick the best fucking DP I can.
Yep. And
I did. I picked Tony Richmond, who shot Don't Look Now, Man Who Fell to Earth, Candyman. And I'm like, this is going to be he shot The Indian Runner. Great. He's a great DP. He was Jean-Luc Godard's DP in the 60s. So I got him. I made sure that I had a killer production designer, a cast that was awesome. And so really, I came loaded for bear. I'm like, we're going to finish this with a movie, and it's going to be a slick movie, and it's going to be a fun movie.
Were you concerned that, because certainly as a writer, you can sit and you can imagine and you can create. Was there concern that once you and Evan and Jace were able to get this script done, was there any concern now that as a director that you weren't going to be able to make the page work on the screen?
Absolutely. It scared the daylights out of me.
Yeah.
Of course. See, if you don't, I came from a writer's perspective and an actor's perspective into directing. Now, other people come in through an editor's perspective or a cinematographer's perspective, and I think those people have more nuts and bolts filmmaking knowledge.
Okay.
Than the writer-actor types do. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean they're better at all. Matter of fact, I would tend to think that people that come from a writing and acting perspective are better because they're less concerned with the technical and more concerned with the emotional. And so, I don't know if that's true or not, but I think everybody is. I think everybody's got their own perspective. But anyway, the point is that if you come at it from a technical point of view, all those scary questions of, oh my God, where are these shots coming from? Oh, how is this going to work? Is this going to cut together into something that resembles a story? I think that you would be more confident that all those questions would be answered yes. Whereas I was like, okay, here we go, good, you guys are, everybody's acting well, we got some good gore effects, there's some funny dialogue here. Okay, now let's see if it cuts together into, and I saw the rough cut of the film, my editor assembly, and I almost died. I was like, no, what have I done? What kind of monster have I wrought here? Or I am the next Ed Wood.
Yeah.
I suck. And that was certainly a heart-wrenching experience. It felt like fun, and I was a little nervous because I didn't know what I was doing. But the truth be told, if you surround yourself with good people, and you keep that ship sailing straight, you're in pretty good shape.
Working with a low-budget movie, did you ever find yourself learning the limitations that were ahead of you in terms of time, money, having, instead of maybe doing 12 shots, narrowing that down to 4 shots? Did you ever find that was kind of... Yes, I did. However, I also, because I had produced or was a producer on, I was not the sole producer on it, a movie called Toolbox Murders. Yes.
That me and Jace wrote. And, I'd acted in so many, movies and written, and as a writers, we were always on the set for all the films. So I was pretty aware of how much things were going to have to change once things got going.
There was a scene for your film Autopsy that looked quite involved.
There's some really cool makeup effects by Gary Tunnicliffe in the movie. Yeah, that looked rad on set. I saw it once we set that whole apparatus up. I was like, damn.
Yeah, and I was going to say, how is that when you walk into your set, you walk onto the set and you see that, and people will know what it is when they see it.
I saw them assemble it in pieces. So,
okay.
So it wasn't that.
I mean, it just had to have been unbelievable.
Yeah, no, it was fun. It was a cool image to come up with in the first place. It was. I knew that was going to be a standout. And for all you listeners out there in podcast land, we're talking about a scene of a terrible fate that befalls one of the characters, and you'll see. You'll know the one we're talking about. It's a very, very elaborate makeup effect.
Yeah, I would say elaborate. Yeah, yes, indeed. In your research for the script, since it is called Autopsy, did you or the other writers go through and pull any films that you could find on autopsies, or did you just kind of leave it up to the imagination?
Okay, this is where I come off sounding like a real. Okay. There are no autopsies in the film.
Okay.
Evan came up with that title. You can blame him entirely for it. It was not titled Autopsy. I can't even remember what it was titled originally. But we were trying to find a catchy. This is actually before we sold it.
Okay.
Both times. But it was, and we were trying to find a catchy title because it was. It was a medical horror movie, and we were trying to think of all sorts of medical titles, like old Sawbones, because they used to call doctors Sawbones.
Okay.
And then it was like, no, it's got saw and it's got bones, and we're just going to confuse the out of everybody. So Evan called me and goes, Autopsy, and I said, well, it sounds medical. Okay, let's go with that. Now, that's about the most dishonest thing I can do for all you listeners out there in podcast land. Be prepared, there are no autopsies in the movie, but there's plenty of stuff that's
I was going to say, because from what I saw, I mean, even if there aren't any autopsies, they're certainly not going to be let down, because there's a whole lot going on, and it's scary as all hell.
Yeah, there's a lot of blood.
Well, getting into the blood. Well, before I get into the blood, even though there weren't any autopsies performed in the movie, was there still a medical advisor on set?
No, there wasn't. We Jace came up with one scene because she once had a very bad headache and woke her up in the middle of the night, and we had to take her down to Cedar-Sinai, and they gave her a spinal tap.
Oh no!
And it went wrong. There was a medical school student, I think, that was doing it or something, and they had to stick the needle in her 3 times before they pierced the spine.
Oh no!
And then they, and then the spine didn't heal, so she wound up leaking spinal fluid and stuff. And so we took that experience. She's fine, don't worry. It actually happens to more people than you would think. So be careful, those of you guys that are about to go get spinal taps. Lie down for at least 8 hours after you get the thing to allow the spine to heal, so you don't drip fluid, because it causes very bad headaches and the like. Anyway, so we took experiences like that, and and I, last time I was in the hospital, or for some tests or something, I had a very weird experience when they said, they put me in the gown and they were going to march me into the MRI room, but they had to go do something. So they said, go down the hallway, take the first left, then a right, and then it's through the double doors labeled magnetic imaging. And there I am walking in my little hospital gown, and I made a right and a left, and I had no idea where I was anymore. I had no clue. And because every corridor looks the same in a hospital. This was down in the basement, and it was just like freaky. And so we pulled upon our personal experiences from those things.
Okay. Well, those are usually the best ways to do it. I mean,
these people that are in the movie that are doing procedures on people, it's highly debatable whether they know what the they're doing.
Well, it's part of the fiction of it all, right? I mean, it is a movie after all.
Exactly. But you try to be real too, and certainly the organs and stuff, we weren't very fanciful with them.
Yep.
And we tried to keep things as real as we could and still had it translate to celluloid.
Okay. Now, you and Jace have worked together. You've worked together quite a bit.
Yeah, she's my girlfriend, the love of my life.
Were you writing before you were dating, or did you start writing together?
No, we had been dating for 2 years.
Okay.
And I was an actor, and she was in social work school. And one day we were like, let's try to write a script. And the rest is history.
Okay.
Oh, we're engaged now.
Oh, congratulations.
In podcast land.
Oh, that's great. Congratulations. Date set?
No, I have to wait to see if this other movie I'm going to do is going to go. I can't talk about that
Sure.
one now.
Okay.
But there's something in the future.
Okay, well, that's awesome. Well, congratulations, especially if it goes. I mean, we're all hoping that it goes for you.
The wedding, either is good news.
Okay. Well, what kind of process do you guys go through with your screenwriting? Is it something where you work together on it, or do you do your draft and then she does a draft and you kind of?
No, I come up with the ideas, generally speaking.
Okay.
And then we talk about them, and she goes and does a draft, and then we go through, or she goes and does a scene, and then we go through the scene together and make notes and polish it and finish it up. So it's one of the reasons we've been able to write as many scripts as we have and still stay together as a couple.
Okay.
Is we don't work in the same room.
Okay. Now, I remember going back, one of the movies that popped in my brain with a man and woman writing it was the original Halloween, where John Carpenter wrote
with Deborah Hill.
Yes, and I remember hearing that she wrote a lot of the dialogue for Jamie Lee Curtis and the other female characters. Is that something that happens with in your case, or
sometimes,
is it just kind of?
Sometimes, certainly more so in Night of the Demons.
Okay.
Than in Autopsy, where Autopsy is very minimal when it comes to people talking.
Okay.
It's very, like you'll see, it's like an old school, like Italian horror film.
Okay, so it's quite visual.
Yes, hopefully. People do talk. It's not a
sure.
Who's like Night of the Demons.
Who has more of a gore interest, you or her?
Well, I certainly dragged her into the dark side.
Okay.
I was the kind of kid that was reading Famous Monsters of Filmland magazine.
Mm-hmm.
And matter of fact, it was actually on the faithful day in, I believe, the late 70s sometime when I went to the store to go find the new issue of Famous Monsters, and I happened upon an issue of a magazine called Fangoria, number 1.
Oh, wow.
And so I bought that day. And I've been on this train for a long time.
Wow.
Let's just say I would be totally useless if I weren't a fan.
Mm-hmm. Well, I would find, and that's interesting because let's talk about that. I know that in certain professions you don't necessarily have to be a fan of what it is that you're doing, but in this situation, even in entertainment, that's the case as well. You'd be surprised that like people are working on a particular, whether it's in TV or film or sports or anything, and they don't necessarily aren't fans of it or didn't grow up with it. For someone like yourself, myself, that have grown up watching horror, having it a part of our lives, can you talk to people that maybe just are finding horror for the first time or kind of dabbling in watching horror movies? What does that mean to you, having gotten Fangoria issue number 1 and having grown up with it, to now be a part of it in such a significant way?
It's strange. I wish that it would have happened more suddenly, because it was such a slow, gradual process. It's sort of like getting a tan,
Mm-hmm.
where, you come back from, a summer at the beach, and everybody's like, boy, you sure do have a tan.
Yeah.
And you were like, really? I didn't notice, So, yes, there were certain times when my agent, when we wrote a horror script first because, we figured that was what I knew so well. Why do anything else?
Mm-hmm.
Really, why not practice what you know?
Yep.
And one of the first things our agent did was send us on a meeting with one of her clients, who is a guy named Toby Hooper. And, did the original Texas Massacre and Poltergeist and
sure.
films like that. And so, I'm sitting there, at lunch with Toby Hooper going, oh, wow, this is cool. And I knew all about him from reading all the old Fangorias and stuff, but I'm trying to be professional and not a slobbering fan, And so I was just sort of like, wait, this is cool. Wow. Imagine look how far I've come. And then so it happens bits and pieces gradually, and then you wind up getting work and working with these people, and then all of a sudden, as soon as you start working with them, their sort of aura of, or at least my feelings of fanboyishness goes away, because I have to act professional around them and work, and be a grown-up to a certain degree. So so it just, all of a sudden, next thing you know, I was like, I had this weird thought. It was a couple months ago, I thought that if I had met me, that if I had met me 10 years ago or 15 years ago, more like 15 years ago, if I had met me 15 years ago, when I was like 25 or something, I would have gone, no, really? Really, him? That's cool. And now I'm just sort of like, oh gosh, I'm just a guy trying to make a living at this, and having to pay his mortgage and do all that totally unglamorous stuff. Occasionally, I try to be a fan too, so even the movies that we've written and stuff that I think really suck, like but even in the movies that we've written that I don't think are very good, I make sure to keep the posters on my wall. I make sure to have posters for the movies, and we keep the DVDs of these films and iShot to remember where we came from.
Yeah. So after you're done with principal photography, you're done, before you go into post, was there anything that you sat back after you're done saying and said to yourself, wow, I really learned blank, as they would say in the 70s game show?
Absolutely. How about I learned how to direct?
Uh-huh. Now, when you say that, what exactly do you mean in terms of camera or direct or actors?
A lot of it for me was camera.
Okay.
Learning in terms of camera.
Sure.
Because I didn't, there were other things that, that you pick up along the way. I learn every script I write, too.
Okay.
Not necessarily. Sometimes it's very much learn what not to do.
Uh-huh.
And in the case of directing, it's the same way. I learned a lot on what to do. I learned a lot on what not to do. A lot of the stuff that I thought would be wow was and a lot of the stuff that I thought would be was wow.
Okay. It's one of those things where you didn't think it would translate, but then when you saw it, it was like, wow, this is better than I ever.
Yeah, or it was, I was on set going, oh my God, how do I shoot this? How do I get this? How do I capture it? What we wrote isn't going to work.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, and I just sort of come up with a spur of the moment idea, or I turn to my actors and go, help me out here, guys.
Sure. Well, speaking of actors, now having Robert Patrick in the movie, obviously with the credits that he brings and the experience that he brings. Now, I haven't seen Autopsy yet, so I don't know how much he's in the movie, but
he's in a decent amount. The other actors are very, very experienced.
Okay. Yeah. How did that help you as a first-time director going onto set?
Well, they knew what they were doing, and and they came up with good creative ideas. And I made sure before we got down to Jacksonville or Baton Rouge, we shot in a little town called Jacksonville, Louisiana.
Okay.
About 45 minutes north of Baton Rouge, at a working mental hospital. I made sure that I talked to all the actors about what their characters were going to be, and told them sort of what my ideas were and got what their ideas were, and sort of collaborated and came up with cool characters for them. So they had stuff to do when they got there. They had ideas and stuff before we even arrived.
Okay. Now, was there a lot of rehearsal done on the set, or were you under such a time crunch where
I had a week of rehearsal with the actors before we shot.
Oh, that's great.
So I got to do stuff. But I mean, in a horror movie, acting rehearsal is only so important.
Yeah.
What's a lot more important is this blood gag gonna work?
Yeah.
Is this, oh wow, we don't have a steady cam.
Mm-hmm.
What are we gonna do? How are we gonna shoot this? Kind of thing. So it was, I was very prepared in terms of that kind of stuff. So I mean, I don't know. It's very hard. It's I tend to have 20/20 hindsight too. Just like, yeah, sure, we had it all figured out.
Yeah.
But truth be told, it's a process like anything else.
Sure. And even people that have been doing that, directing whatever it is over a long period of time, you're still learning new stuff anyway, because new things always come up.
The thing about directing is no director, it seems to be a disease that directors can't admit that that they're, how about mortal?
Mm-hmm.
So everybody's sort of like, yeah, this is my vision. It's, oh, shut the up. You didn't know what the hell you were talking about. You finally saw a cut and you're like, okay, well, this will work, It's just like, we're all grown-ups here. We can admit we're grown-ups,
Yeah. So let's talk about the film festival. The 8 Films to Die For Film Festival is January 9th to January 16th, playing in different cities. How excited are you now that your film is finally going to be shown?
I'm very excited. I'm nervous. I think it's going to be cool. I hope people like it. I don't look forward to reading the bloody, disgusting message boards the next day because those people are mean. But I'm very excited. I mean, it's not often when a dream comes true.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's got to just be. I mean, I can't imagine being in your shoes, having worked as a writer, and now getting your first film out there for everybody to see. It's got to be just a rush. Yeah.
It's a trip.
Well, he is Adam Gierasch. He is the director of Autopsy. It is one of the 8 films to die for in this year's After Dark Horror Festival. Please go out, support your independent filmmakers. And Adam, I'd like to thank you again for joining me in the graveyard.
Cool. Well, thank you for being in the graveyard. And I've enjoyed it.
Well, welcome back. I hope you enjoyed revisiting my interview with director Adam Gierasch discussing Autopsy. I gotta tell you, I just loved his honesty. He made my job so easy that day doing that interview. It was really a whole lot of fun, just chock full of information. And for any aspiring filmmaker out there, director, writer, any part of the business, hopefully you learned a lot by listening to Adam. This was one of those interviews, like I said at the top, that really, it's entertaining, but you just learn so much from it. This was one of those interviews that I did for the show that really helped, I think, pull back the curtain a little bit and get the average person to understand what it's like to make a movie. Whenever I'm able to get that on the show, it's great, because not only did I want the show to be entertaining, I wanted it to be really informative. And this was one of those interviews, and I have many more that will be coming up as well. So if you enjoyed the show, and it's your first time listening to this, welcome. And there are 2 other Tombstone editions of the show that I uploaded. As I mentioned at the top of the show, Tombstone number 2, which was with actor Hal Havens discussing Night of the Demons, the original. And Tombstone number 1 had director Patrick Lussier, as he came on the show to discuss his film at the time, My Bloody Valentine 3D. Again, great information from those interviews as well, learning what it's like as an actor, as a director. Patrick was also Wes Craven's editor for a very long time. So just tons of information for you if you're learning and want to be a part of the entertainment business, just to kind of hear what working professionals in the industry have to say and advice that they can give and experiences that they've had as well. Of course, if you like the show and you want to subscribe, hit that subscribe button. And if you like it, hey, give me a like. I like likes. Likes are good. All right. Of course, comments are always welcome. Come on back, folks, because like I said, there's plenty more interviews to come over these next weeks and months to come. I'm happy you could join me here inside the graveyard. It gets a little lonely here sometimes, so having friends come by to say hello is always welcome. And as you exit the graveyard, as always, I like to remind you to please lock the gate behind you. We wouldn't want anyone to get out. Until next time.